So I just thought I'd take you on a little journey first. This journey is out to my garage. I need the keys to unlock the door. Ignore the weeds. I'm not a very good gardener. Once I manage to get into the garage, which is a struggle to find the key. Yeah, it's a mess. Most garages are, aren't they? Lights are on, and stuck over in the corner is my vacuum chamber, covered in dust, unused for a long time, and it's even got its own little webs. Hiya, welcome back to my channel. It's Wendy here from Toonpish Crafts, and I hope you're doing okay. Now, a few months ago, I was contacted by Resiners, and they asked me if I wanted to try Airless. Airless is a bubble removal machine, and at the time I had so much going on, and I just couldn't fit it in, so I said thank you very much, but no. Since then, Steve McDonald and Daniel Cooper and a few others have had the machine and have tried it out. And they contacted me again, and I said, yes, okay, I'll give it a go. Just send it here. Apparently everybody loves it, so why not try it? Now, this machine is going to be reviewed by a lot of people, but, you know, it's good to get other people's point of view, isn't it? So, yeah, let's have a look how I got on with the Airless. This is the Resiners Airless Bubble Removal Machine. An affiliate link will be in the description box below this video. So if you click on the More Info tab, you'll see all my links underneath this video. It was well boxed, well packaged. You could see that there was care and attention in how it was packaged. It's quite dinky, very nice to sit on the table or any worktop really. That little area is the pressure relief valve. Looks a bit scratched on the top, but there is a plastic film that I took off. It reminds me a little of a food mixer actually, the way it looks. Now this is the power cord and plug, which is an American plug. And although it confused me a little to start with, I realised I have an American power cord adapter, so it wasn't too much trouble. The only other thing I could say about this is the lead is really short. We could do with a longer lead, people. Especially as you plug in the power cord at the top of the machine. That reduces the length of the lead quite a bit. Then I decided that I was going to put some old silicone in the bottom of this in case I have any spillages. I have no clue how powerful this little machine is, or whether it would spill out resin all over the place. I've used this system in the bottom of my pressure pot. It's an old silicone mat that I've cut and sliced up so that it will fit in the bottom. Now to try it out, I had to put an extension lead up on my worktop to be able to plug it in as the lead is so short. It has two modes, 5 minutes and 9 minutes, and I did want to see how much it vibrated and how loud it was. So this is the unadjusted sound that's been picked up by my camera. Together with a rather large vibration motion, and that is releasing the pressure. At this point my camera decided to stop working, so I had to get out my new camera, which I had in anticipation as this one was breaking. But even though I was prepared, I didn't realise the new camera was too heavy for the old camera's support arm, so I had to order a new support arm. While waiting for a new support arm, I still had to carry on filming, so some of this footage is in a funny direction and funny angles. I grabbed a mould that I've used recently, you may have seen it in last week's video, and I'm using the Estoyo mixer. All the links for these will be in the description box below. I'm going to be using Let's Resin Fast Cure resin for this. It's the one I've decided to use because it's fast cure and I can do more in less time. I'm measuring out 60ml part A and 60ml part B, and I'm going to be using the mixer to mix it together. Now, I want to emphasize here, I am not using the mixer correctly. I am deliberately using it incorrectly so that I add bubbles, and I deliberately add bubbles for 3 minutes. So I've mixed and put as much air into this resin as I could possibly manage, because I want this machine to show me how it gets rid of the bubbles. It's easy to place in. You put it in the centre of the machine. You shouldn't fill up the cup too much apparently, and this is about half full, so I figured it was about enough. And then I just sat and watched it. It was fascinating. Now this is the 5 minute setting that I chose. I think I should have chosen 9 really. I'm going to speed it up for you. This is times 12 so that you can maybe see a little bit better than I could at the time. Sorry about the flickering of the surface. I was wandering around in my room because I was just waiting and watching. You know what it's like. But you can clearly see on the very first rotation it pulled out a lot of air. Now I didn't open the safety valve the first time. I just turned it on again. It already had the pressure, so the next 5 minutes was just carrying on with that pressure already inside. I don't know whether you're meant to open it each time, but I just carried on. Now at the beginning of this video I showed you that I have a vacuum chamber, but it lives in my garage because it is noisy, it's cumbersome, it's huge, it takes up so much room, but it is quick, I'll give it that, but it's so noisy that I just stopped using it. After the second 5 minute rotation, I decided to open the valve, and then as there were still some bubbles inside, I did a third rotation for another 5 minutes. After 15 minutes, I decided that that was enough. I could not see any more bubbles in that resin at all. But it was getting quite warm. It was fast cure resin, and 15 minutes of non-working time was quite a lot, so I had to work fairly fast. This wolf mould has got a lot of pointed crystal type spines on it, so I did use my micro brush to get rid of any stuck air in those crystal tips. I then decided to use a sphere type mould and a faceted mould as well, with the rest of the resin I had. Now, as I said, my other vacuum chamber, which is massive and noisy, sits in the garage and I don't use it. This is dinky, it sits on the worktop and it's quiet. I like that. So this is the same day, about 5 hours later, and I decided to demold to show you guys after 5 hours how solid this resin is and what the resin has done after being in the airless. There are a few bubbles in this piece, and I will put up pictures later for you to actually see clearly, but generally inside the resin there isn't any. I would imagine that those bubbles are more from air being trapped in the mould than from in the resin itself. I did decide that this mould had to have some isopropyl alcohol so that I could demold it better. It's not a great mould, but at least you can see through it, and those small bubbles that you see are surface bubbles. Inside, although out of focus slightly from my new camera that I'm still trying to get used to, it's pretty clear. Again, I will show you photos at the end that you can see in comparison with some other tests that I'm going to be doing. The Fox you can't see any bubbles in. It is one of those moulds that kind of hides bubbles anyway, but looking at the bottom, you can't see a thing. So far, so good. So I decided to put it up against other ways to reduce bubbles in resin, and let's see how it compares. I decided to do a controlled test. Now, controlled is basically where I'm going to do absolutely everything the same, put the same amount of bubbles in the same amount of resin, and just use the same moulds, but do absolutely nothing with them. Controlled just basically means nothing. So when it's full up with as much air as I could possibly put in it, I'm going to pour it into the same moulds. Do exactly the same as I did with the Airless. Using the micro brush again to get rid of those point bubbles, because that's fair, I'm going to do everything the same. Fill it up completely, and the other 2 moulds as well, and just leave them to cure. Not doing anything else to them. This did not go through anything. It did not do anything. Did have a squirt of isopropyl alcohol, as I did with the first one. The following day, I demoulded this to see what it was like. This is the controlled. Remember, there's nothing done to this. Bubbles were added and that was it. And as you can see, the fox, you can't see anything in there. It doesn't look too bad in there actually. There are micro bubbles though, as that shows. Now that admittedly, most of that is on the surface, but that's where the bubbles would have gone. And that's the same. So now I'm going to try a pressure pot. This is a pressure pot I have. As you can see, it's £240, but you also need an air compressor, which is another £128. So that comes to £370 or roughly $475. That is a big commitment for anyone. I'm going to do exactly the same as I've done in the last 2 tests. I've put as much air in it as possible. I'm using the same 3 moulds, and I use the same micro brush and isopropyl alcohol as I have done before. Exactly the same, and this time it's going to go into my pressure pot. Well, after that dodgy footage of me putting the pieces in the pressure pot with one hand while I tried to film with the left hand, I asked my husband if he would help film this part, so I had 2 hands free. And although he needed some instruction, he did really well. It's a lot better than my footage, I can tell you. So these pieces have been in my pressure pot for a good few hours, overnight in fact, at 4 bar. I use my pressure pot a lot. It does take up a lot of room, but I'm happy with that. But it was expensive to buy it in the first place. But I've had it for 4 years and I love it. Now I'm pretty sure I know the outcome of what's coming out of these moulds, because it's pretty much consistent. Every time you take something out of the pressure pot, this will be the result. It is crystal because it compresses the bubbles down so small that you cannot see them. They're still in there, but they're so small that you can't see them. So that's the result of a pressure pot. You have to leave pieces in there for the full cure time. There's no chance of taking them out early, because the bubbles that are in there will then expand if the resin isn't fully cured. This is a Stoyo's heat mat. I received it recently and there is a link for it in the description box below. Heat is a good way to get rid of bubbles, but this is fast cure resin, and fast cure resin cures in 3 to 4 hours anyway. On a heat mat, on low temperature for 2 hours, it's going to cure extremely fast. So following the exact same steps as I've done in the previous examples, I did the same with this. The heat mat went off after 2 hours. I left the pieces for a total of 3 hours curing, and this is what I have. This resin had no time to release any of the bubbles. The bubbles are packed in they're on the surface, they're everywhere. So although heat does reduce bubbles, curing resin needs to have enough time to release the bubbles that are in it, and this resin had far too many bubbles for the release time or the cure time of this fast cure resin on a heat mat. So it didn't help. If anything, it made it 10 times worse. So what's my conclusion? Well, I absolutely love my pressure pot. For me personally, it's my preferred way, but it has its downfalls. It's noisy, it takes up a lot of room, and you have to leave things in there for the full cure time. The airless, however, is a better option than a huge vacuum chamber that I have sitting in my garage because it was just far too noisy, cumbersome and took up too much room. It's about a third of the price of the pressure pot. It's a lot less of commitment and it works beautifully. Definitely do not put fast cure resin that is full of bubbles on a heat mat in the middle of summer. That's for sure. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this one. I hope you've got something out of it. Not everything I make goes in the pressure pot, so I will definitely be using the airless for pieces that don't. Anyway, come back and see me next week because you never know what I'm going to be up to. I never know what I'm going to be up to. Have a great week. Happy crafting and bye for now.